Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Martin, and I'm the Executive Director at the Clay Studio. Today I have the pleasure of kicking off the panel discussion, Staying Centered by Going Places. And I have the pleasure and honor of working with these staff and artists daily. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about the Clay Studio and what led us to these two projects that you're going to hear about today. A little bit of background on the Clay Studio. The Clay Studio is an anchor in Philadelphia, and we are 45 years old this year. TCS was founded in 1974 by 5 artists who came together for shared studio space. Within a short time, these artists consciously shifted the studio's mission from an inward focus to an outward community and education center that it has become today. In 1979, they formed a nonprofit. Today, we are a destination where all people of all ages and backgrounds can explore the vast world of clay. We have artist programs, a school, a shop, gallery, and of course, our Claymobile Community Engagement Program. After 45 years of investing in Old City, we are ready to embark on the next step in our future. This is not about growth for growth's sake. The Claymobile reaches 3,000 youth throughout Philadelphia each year, and the entire organization serves over 35,000 people annually. We are at capacity. Our kilns are full, our classes are overpopulated, and we have waiting lists and are turning people away. Our last expansion project over 10 years ago was designed for our school to serve 1,100 people, and today we have 4,600 people per year in our classes. For about 10 years, our Claymobile studio has been off-site, and it is not in our current building. It's actually located in our new neighborhood where we're going. So to make this dream come true, we've put in a lot of research and consulted and time, and we decided to embark on a $13.7 million capital project. The capital campaign is made up of $5.6 million, and we have over 75% of the funds raised, and will continue to need your support. Our project is scheduled to break ground later this year with an anticipated move in the beginning of 2021. This new building will allow the quality of programming that we can do to surpass anything that we've ever been able to do this far. We've identified and purchased a vacant lot in the South Kensington neighborhood of Philadelphia, and we will begin building this building that you're seeing here as a concept drawing from the ground up. This 32,000 square foot facility gives us room for growth and expansion and new programming that we don't currently have. Some highlights of the building include, first and foremost, bringing the Claymobile home. We have a space for the Claymobile program on the ground floor. We have an outdoor event space so that we can do public free programming that's welcoming to the community, the new community that we're going to be in. We're doubling our classroom capacity. We currently have classroom space for about 350 students, and we'll have shelving space for 600 in the new building. In addition, we'll have a dedicated prototyping and plaster space that we don't currently have with all the equipment that belongs in that space. The gallery will have a much better layout. The artist spaces will be more consistent, and we'll be able to restart our Visiting Artists International program. What else? More, next. Oh, so this is the outdoor space. If you've ever been to any of our events, we do a lot of outdoor programming in what is our parking lot now. So this will be our parking lot, but it'll be covered. This is a sample of what the classroom will look like. And there'll be an outdoor area on the rooftop deck area for people to come together and build community. The Clay Studio is eager to join in the conscious and thoughtful development effort within the South Kensington neighborhood. We want to make the neighborhood, the needs of the neighborhood, a priority. Feel free to contact me if you want to hear any other news, but I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Zwilling. Today we'll hear about the work that's already started in our new neighborhood. Jennifer Zwilling, or Jay-Z as we call her, because we can't have two Jennifers, is going to moderate today's panel. Jennifer Zwilling is the curator of artistic programs, oversees the gallery exhibitions, curates the shop, manages the Clay Studio collection, guest artist in resident, and resident artist programs. Previously, Jennifer was the assistant curator of American Decorative Arts with a focus on contemporary craft at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. In addition, Jennifer spent 10 years developing and teaching an extensive college course on the history of modern craft and design at Tyler School of Art. Please help me welcome your moderator, Jennifer Zwilling.
Thanks, Jen. I also just wanted to mention when Jennifer Martin talked about the Claymobile program, we actually have Catherine Narrow here who founded that program 25 years ago. Is that right, Josie? 25, so thank you. So I want to thank Jen Martin. She is an inspiration, and it is a privilege to work with her at the Clay Studio. The capital campaign that's happening is largely due to her hard work, so make sure that you give her a big pat on the back. She deserves it when you meet her in person. I want to reiterate my gratitude to all of our partners, which include these amazing ladies sitting next to me, the whole Clay Studio staff, our teaching artists, the community organizers, Tim Gibbon and Farah Rahman, who helped us reach the neighbors in the South Kensington neighborhood, the organizations that we connected with that are already active in the neighborhood, our partners, neighbors, participants, that's all one group. We considered the neighbors who came to work with us, our partners on this project as well, and finally our other partner, the artist Roberto Lugo, who is the other person working on Clay and Conversations. He was born in the neighborhood where we are moving to, and he is dedicated to serving that community through his art practice. All right, I don't usually read my remarks, but as you all have ceramics as your craft, my craft is writing and thinking, so I spent a long time on this one, so I'm actually going to read it, so hopefully you'll bear with me. I decided to, and Josie's going to click for me. Behind me on the screen are just going to be images of the program that we did. I decided to study art history because I believe understanding art can help people understand what connects us all. I decided to become a curator, to present art in a way that helps others see those connections. As curator of artistic programs at the Clay Studio in Philadelphia for the last 4 years, I've worked to make art relevant and accessible to as many people as possible. A new project designed to build connections in the area where the Clay Studio will move in about a year has shown me how much I still have to learn. I expected to have some nice conversations with the residents of South Kensington, our new neighborhood. Instead, what has unfolded was completely different and far more powerful than I could have imagined. My first experience with the power of art to bring people together came in college when I was studying in Spain. I remember gazing up at cathedrals and ancient buildings, thunderstruck. I glimpsed, embedded in the architecture, the hopes and dreams of those who had built them. Those buildings were as compelling as any historical documents, and I was a history major who quickly turned to art history. So when I got back to the United States, I majored in art history. I focused on how artworks speak for people and cultures. In the American Decorative Arts Department at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, I studied functional works such as chairs, vases, and teapots. I learned about the makers, patrons, and the past cultures in which they functioned, how status was displayed, which objects were made, cherished, and saved for future generations. When I moved to the Clay Studio in 2015, I learned to make a new kind of curatorial connection, directly with the artists who make the sort of objects I admire. I often joke that I went from dealing with mostly dead artists to all living ones, and all the joys and amazing possibilities that come along with that. Thank you, Hope. So I was learning in a more immediate way from the artists, discussing their work, their processes, their materials. Curating programs and exhibitions with living, breathing people I knew forced me outside of my comfort zone, but more challenges were around the corner. A little more than a year ago, my colleagues Jennifer Martin and Josie Bockelman and I started talking about our forthcoming move to a rapidly gentrifying area and how we might become a welcome part of the neighborhood, rather than an interloper driving up rents and driving out long-term residents. We wanted to ask the neighbors how they'd like the Clay Studio to function in their community. We wanted the gallery space to be a place of sanctuary and inspiration, and the exhibition program to be welcoming and meaningful, especially for the people nearby. We wanted our neighbors to have a say in what we do, which was possible only if they felt comfortable walking in the door. We developed a program called Clan Conversations, asking for help from artists Roberto Lugo, who grew up in the neighborhood, and Jennie Shanker, who creates social engagement projects. We hired 2 community organizers to help us meet as many neighbors as possible. We organized 4 sessions, each with a ceramic project layered with a series of questions we hoped would spark conversations about how we could serve the community. The surprises came fast and furious. Our initial plan was a kickoff party where we would introduce ourselves to lots of people as we made art and chatted. This is how we imagined it happening, right? We quickly realized people were unlikely to engage before we went out and introduced ourselves and our project, building trust first. Dozens of religious, civic, cultural, arts, garden, and school-based organizations are already there doing great work. Who are we to suggest that they wanted or needed us? So instead of a big party in September, we spent 3 months meeting with these groups, asking them to be part of our Clay and Conversations events. We heard it would be hard to just get people to attend. So using our grant money, we offered to pay people for their time, making them partners, not just participants. And we provided childcare and food during the events. We were thrilled when people of all ages showed up. A group of about 8 teenagers came to all 4 events. Initially, they even told us they were just there for the money. But they made art and contributed to the conversation as intently as anyone else. About 40 people attended each event, happy to have the chance to make something of their own and determined to be heard. They included lifelong neighborhood residents, new arrivals from Puerto Rico who had been displaced after Hurricane Maria, members of the nearby Al-Aqsa Islamic Society, artists who had moved to the area in recent years, and those ebullient teens. Once people had clay in their hands, conversations blossomed. Intense discussions about art and life unfolded, though not in a tidy, cohesive way that was easy to capture. By the 4th event, we started placing staff and recorders among the participants to just listen. Sorry. This is the important part, so I have to say it clearly. That was my new curatorial lesson. Listen. And not just long enough to think of a response. Just be quiet and listen. Don't try to steer the conversation where you think it should go. Let it evolve on its own. My background in curating and teaching, and some might say my personality, make it hard to listen quietly. But isn't that one of the things missing today from American discourse? If there were more listening, perhaps there would be more understanding and less rancor. Now, in the wake of our conversations, we have a new cohort of Clay Studio community members, new ambassadors. They form our Neighbor Advisory Committee, which we didn't know we needed until we did this project. What is exciting and a little scary is that our project hasn't ended, it's just beginning. Today, more than ever, we can all benefit from the power of art to bring people together. We need to work hard to make art relevant to new audiences. I am a curator in service to the art, to the artists, the audiences, and the communities around me. I'm daunted by this changing role, but at the same time, I can't wait to keep listening, learning, and moving forward. Thanks. Boy, my throat got dry. You guys should bring your water up here when you come. So, now we move on to our next speaker, Josie Bockelman. Josie Bockelman came to the Clay Studio 7 years ago from Ann Arbor, where she was the director of programs at the Ann Arbor Art Center. She also worked at San Diego Art Department, Gage Academy of Art in Seattle, and has her BA in ceramics from Whitman College. 7 years ago, she began running the school at the Clay Studio, where she managed 35 teaching artists, developed classes, camps, and workshops that reach over 7,000 people each year. She developed new strategies to serve those people better. She is now the Clay Studio Chief Operating Officer, and her organizational skills infuse and improve all aspects of the organization. She believes strongly in the power of art to support community, Josie conceived, organized, and executed the Maker Days project. She was a key member of the team for the Clay Studios' other project, the one I talked about, Clay and Conversations. I feel lucky to have had her expertise and partnership, and I feel lucky to work with her every day. Josie Bockelman.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jen, for the introduction. I'm going to start by playing a video that we had made for the Community Maker Days project. Let's see.
People want to make things, but when they get to actually touch the clay, it's on their hands, it's soft, they can make a mark and it stays. They just get it.
For me, there's just such power in clay, and there's that sort of like the great equalizer that everybody's going to get dirty. The South Kensington neighborhood is such a vibrant, diverse, and dynamic neighborhood, and I think for us, it just felt like a natural fit. Getting to know our new community has just been really wonderful.
We're coming into a really wonderful, vibrant, established community, and we want to present ourselves saying we respect what's here. We think what we do is wonderful, but what's going to be really great is when we're doing it together.
Because the Clay Studio is moving to this new location, the idea was to come into Kensington and meet the people, meet the community. So we went into all the different kind of parks, street fairs, and all of the smaller little pockets of Kensington. And we made plates, so everyone got to actually make the plates, they got to decorate the plates.
We did 8 different Community Maker Days. We had just as many partners that were really wonderful and allowed us to participate in their community events.
Hundreds of people got to make plates that they're going to be using tonight. We're bringing all of those people together, and we're also celebrating the neighborhood because all the food we've gotten is from 4 different neighborhood restaurants representing all different cultures that are here. So it's just a celebration of everything that's happening.
So I lived here for 13 years, so I consider this home as much as everyone else, and there's really amazing different cultures, and so we were trying to bring them all together by making plates together. So now everyone is trying to find the plate that they decorated.
At the heart of the Clay Studio is really nurturing a very vibrant community, and it's very important to me and to the institution that the greater community feel like the Clay Studio coming in and moving, that it's going to be a place for them and that's open to them and welcoming. All right. So I wanted to start by giving you all a little bit of background on our community engagement programs that really prepared us to take on the Maker Days project. As Jennifer mentioned, in 1994, Catherine Narrow, our mama bear, created the Claymobile program that brings everything necessary for a weekly clay class to partnering sites and then brings it all back to our Claymobile studio for processing. We have worked with hundreds of schools, social service organizations, and community centers all over Philadelphia and into New Jersey. Currently, we partner with 75 different organizations that serve 3,000 youth and adults annually, and we serve an additional 10,000 people through our hands-on clay activities that bring clay projects to festivals and community events all around the city and just outside of our studio doors each summer. In 2017, we received funding from the William Penn Foundation through their Creative Communities New Audiences, New Places program for the Maker Days project, focused on the neighborhoods surrounding the site of our future home in South Kensington. South Kensington is a relatively dense and residential area and home to a large Puerto Rican community with 60% of the households having children under the age of 18. And as recent as 2014, 30% of the land was vacant, but that statistic has changed radically in the last 5 years. Residents of South Kensington have been traditionally lower income, although more affluent neighbors are moving in. When thinking about ways to connect with our new neighbors and knowing how busy and lean we are as an organization, I consciously didn't want to create a project that went completely out of the scope of what we know how to do. But I also wanted to be an active partner in the second iteration of a project called the American Street Feast that was put on by a local organization in 2016 and brought together 550 people who either lived, worked, or worshiped in South Kensington to connect over a shared meal. So our initial project plan was to hold 8 plate-making events around the neighborhood to make 500 plates for the American Street Feast. Hope Rovelto and Hiroe Hanazono graciously agreed to be the lead teaching artists. Hope lived in the neighborhood and has done a number of community projects there. And part of bringing her onto the project is that she's so knowledgeable of working with decals and a fabulous teacher. And although Hiroe doesn't consider working in community as part of her practice, she lives in the neighborhood, is an amazing teacher and master mold maker, and I really thought she could help us problem solve making 500 plates with the community, which seemed kind of daunting and was at different points. Oh, totally forgot all my slides. Yeah. Thank you. Just working through that. Since the Conversations and Community Maker Days projects would have a similar timeline, and would look like the same project to the community, we got approval from both funders to share resources and, as Jennifer mentioned, create a team of community organizers who worked on the project simultaneously, so they worked on both projects together. And they really spent the first 5 months meeting with leaders at different community organizations to let them know about the 2 projects, the plans for the building, and to really just learn from them about the neighborhoods and their needs and desires for how the Clay Studio could be a partner in the future. Since we had this big goal of making 500 plates, we decided early on to focus on partnering and participating in community festivals for the Maker Days events. In the end, we did a variety of different events, from really large public festivals to smaller community events that were organized as part of a series bringing local documentaries to the streets, an annual Eid celebration at the local mosque just around the corner from our new building. At each event, we had both a making station and a decorating station. The making station involved participants making plates with molds and slabs of pre-cut clay that fit the size of the mold. Our staff would then bisque and glaze fire the plates and then have the glazed plates ready at the next event for another community member to decorate with decals. Each event had a variety of decals with words in English and Spanish and symbols that reflected Philadelphia and imagery inspired by specific places or events that we were participating in. Everyone who made plates and their families were invited to the culminating event. A few months into the project, we found out that our partner didn't have enough organizational capacity to hold the American Street Feast in 2018, so that just meant that we had to plan a larger culminating event that would best send all of these plates out into the world. In the end, we decided to hold a dinner on the site of our new location and have it on the same day as our 4th annual Clay Fest. So during the day, we had 600 people through Clay Fest, and then we had 3 hours to transition into a 200-person dinner. We put together a neighborhood advisory committee made up of Clay and Conversation partners who helped us plan, decorate, and set up for the dinner. We served food from local Arabic, Mexican, and Puerto Rican restaurants, as well as 2 local chefs. In the end, we served 200 people, and we concluded the event with an amazing performance by Familia Rojas, which is a local bamba group. It was amazing to see the community makers and their families start to file in for the dinner and see the excitement, joy, and pride when they got to pick out their plate, or when one of their family members got to pick a plate that resonated with them and was made by someone else in the community. The positive energy from that evening was palpable, and it made me really excited for the Clay Studio's future in South Kensington.
Thanks, Josie. Hiroe Hanazono is a dedicated teaching artist who has taught in New York and at the Clay Studio for the last 8 years. She produces highly functional tableware in her Philadelphia home studio and brought a wealth of expertise to the creation of tableware forms and molds used in the Community Makers Day project, as Josie mentioned. Hiroe is a native of Japan, earned her BA in Spatial Art and Ceramics from California State University and her MFA in Ceramics from Ohio University. Hiroe was a resident artist and a Shapiro Fellow at the Clay Studio. Here's Hiroe.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, so
It's the
you
green button.
pretty much said who I am, that I'm going to show. But yes, so I'm Hiroe Hanazono. I am all about food. I have a great passion for food, and not only I like to eat, but I love planning, preparing, cooking, and have a nice meal with friends and families. That's what drives me to make functional pots. I am originally from Japan, as Josie mentioned, and when I said that, people ask me which part of Japan you're from. So if you see the arrow, I'm from Iwaki. I grew up right next to the Pacific Ocean, eating lots of fish. And I moved to San Francisco in '93, and I started doing ceramics, not in Japan, but in California, and went to school there. I would go to workshops in different places, and I met Rovelto in 2003 in Mendocino, California, and she's the reason I moved to Boston, about west of Boston, in Worcester, Massachusetts, in 2003, and I was an artist there for 2 years, and made a bunch of work, always something to do with food, and sets of dishes that I could enjoy with a group of people, and then that's right, it's not okay. And then I went to Ohio University, and continuously making work, and so started out making wheel work, hand building work, and then started making mold-made work. These heavy-looking dishes, thinking about this is what we do, be in front of a computer, or eating while driving, and hoping to make these like heavy dishes. Maybe we need to stop, slowing down, eat nice meal once twice a day. So I do work with plaster and mold making in slip casting past over a little over 10 years. And I did residencies after grad school. I've gone to Archibald or Guerego in Denmark. I did some residency, and I got lucky, and I moved to Clay Studio. Got the residency from the Clay Studio, and it was an amazing residency. It was 5 years. I was able to make lots of connections, and decided to be Philadelphia is my home. So I got this garret building, and now I have a studio in my home. I do, besides making my work, I teach all over the places besides Clay Studio. I've been always loving teaching at the Clay Studio. I go to New York twice a week. I teach at Greenwich House Pottery, more mold making classes, do workshops throughout the countries. Whenever I have opportunities, I also teach foundation classes at Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia. I love working with people, different diverse group of students, different background of people. It always excites me working with different people from different background, and so I continuously make dishes in my home studio. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hiroe. Next is Hope Rovelto. Hope earned her BFA in sculpture at Maine College of Art and her MFA in ceramics from the Rochester Institute of Technology School for American Craft. She lived in Philadelphia for many years, teaching at the University of the Arts and at the Clay Studio, and creating her screen printing business, Little Chair Printing. In 2017, I think it was, Hope moved to Maine, where she is continuing her community work and her personal work and her screen printing work and probably 10 other things. Hope brought expertise with the ceramic decal process and her dedication to socially minded art practice to the Maker Days project. Hope.
I might stand over here. Okay. Thank you again for the Clay Studio. So I do live in Portland, Maine. And last year I would travel back once a month, twice a month, to Philadelphia to work on this project, because this project was really important to me. It was in the neighborhood that I lived in, and the Clay Studio is dear to me of the work that they put out into the community and through art and through ceramics. So you're going to see that I don't necessarily make a lot of clay work right now, but it's really all about social practice and kind of who you are as an artist. And so for me to be part of this project is really in line of my vision, being an educator, being a social kind of activist in many different ways. And so I found screen printing, I mean, print and ceramics go really well together, but screen printing seems to be a little bit more immediate for me right now. And it's a way that I can really talk to communities and ask them, what do they believe in? What do they want to say? And then they're using their body to wear it or holding posters. So if you think about, it's just a different form of object and making. I also do hair art. I don't do it, but if you want me to shave your head, I would love to, because no one else will let me. And I really want to shave someone's head, but I can't, so someone has to do it to me. But there's just something about kind of expressing yourself. 2016, though, with my ceramic background, I'm all about making, and so I made 500 cups, and they're party cups. So I'm a sculptor, mold maker, and so I casted over 500 cups, and I had a party, and I called it, this one was Still Divided. In 2012, I did a party that was called Divided, and it was about the presidential election and how we're still divided. So we have issues, and so understanding conversation and community, I made cups. There was just a door. Someone could pay $25 to come to my event. I gave you free beer. We had free popcorn. And then there's all these events, and we get to watch the election come in. So you get to take away a cup. So it's really, for me, it's really about the experience and for me to give you something in return. And so I still might do that for this term. So clay keeps coming back. I still teach it. I still am really part of it. And the idea of kind of making, though, screen printing seems to take over a lot more. So this is kind of some new work that has some clay there. The FU is ceramics. It's porcelain. And then everything else is screen print. So this piece is an interactive piece, and this was at the Clay Art Center in Port Chester, New York, where people could kind of write their feelings, positive or negative, about what's happening politically. The thing is I really want people to start talking about it. I have a very hard relationship with my family because of the differences, and that I don't know why, but I feel the need to keep making work to create those conversations even more. And screen printing, you can print, hundreds of prints in a small amount of time. But I do, as a sculptor, as an installation artist, I still kind of bring that stuff together. So I still try to tap into all those kind of parts in my brain. As a creator, you're a creator, and so if your medium changes, that's okay, you kind of go with that. Do I go back to ceramics? Sure, absolutely. I love the community about ceramics, and I love working with my hands, so that could come back into play. Last year, so now that I'm in Portland, Maine, I received an artist grant from the Kindling Foundation, which is the Andy Warhol Foundation, that re-gifts or re-grants artists, give them money to do some artist programs. So this is my bicycle screen printing shop, where is my social kind of bike that I bring into communities, and I teach them how to print. They come up with ideas, and then I can really kind of engage them in that kind of conversation, but it's through print. And so my goal is to travel around the state of Maine. There's 16 counties in Maine. It's very rural. Maine has some conversations about racial justice and differences, and we have a huge refugee and asylum-seeking community, and there's all different pockets, and then you have the fishermen. So there's a lot of diversity in Maine, and I see a lot of things happening there. And so this was a Martin Luther King Day that we worked with a bunch of youth community centers around Portland, Maine, and we went and we kind of celebrated and printed posters. The kids all designed the T-shirts and the posters, and we got to kind of help them print that. I think the one thing Jay-Z mentioned, it's about listening. I'm not coming into these communities basically saying, hey, I know what you need to say. I actually just want to help facilitate that and say, what do you want to say? I am going to help you, and you're going to make it into a poster, put it on a T-shirt. So during the time of the school walkout, I think most states had this. This was last year. We call BS. And so I was hired by the Maine Gun Safety Coalition to make these posters and T-shirts that were at Augusta, which is the state capital. And the posters and T-shirts were on TV, and it was really with all the kids just kind of like, is it about me at all? No, not at all. Like, for me, I can just take pride knowing that, like, I was behind that, and it was just something that they wanted to say, and so I could print that to then share with that, and so then they can take it where they need to. And I think as an artist and as kind of a person, a human, it's really important to me to really listen and then kind of give back. And so I'm still doing those projects in Maine. I do want to print and do these projects in every state, so keep your eye out for me. I want to build an RV with a full print shop with solar panels, so I could show up to your house and print like 100 shirts. I could print anywhere. So those are some of the larger projects that I'm trying to apply for grants and try to get funding for. So keep your eye out for that. So thank you very much.
Last but not least, Jennie Shanker is an artist, educator, and activist. She has, lost my place. She's worked on multiple community engagement public works, often as part of the revitalization of neighborhood sites. She earned her BFA from the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, and then her MFA in sculpture from Yale, and her MAT in teaching visual arts, again from the University of the Arts. She's an adjunct at the Tyler School of Art in community arts, in sculpture, and in ceramics, and at Moore College of Art in studio and social practice. Since 2014, Jennie has been collaborating with former residents of the Norris Homes in Philadelphia Housing Authority community as they transition from their homes in a low-income housing project to a mixed-income community. Another previous project of Jennie's explored the issues of fracking in the Marcellus shales. So thank you, Jennie.
Thanks, Jennifer. Can you hear me? Yes? Are we okay? All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you to the Clay Studio. I think we're very lucky in Philadelphia in terms of social practice. We have so many organizations like the Clay Studio. We have the Village of Arts and Humanities, which was Ile Ife. We have Mural Arts. We have a lot of organizations that have been engaged in our communities for quite a long time. And who were really ahead of things, and who taught a lot of artists how to really engage, including myself. So the first time I got involved in any sort of community-oriented work was through Mural Arts, where I was asked to work with a group of high school kids. We brought them to a school that I was working at, and in 6 weeks in the summertime, they drew from observation. They learned how to scale their drawings up. They learned how to cut, bend, and weld metal, and they made these amazing metal flowers that ended up on this elementary school in North Philly and really changed the environment. So I worked several times with these Mural Corps kids. This was the first time that it was at a college, and it really had a tremendous effect on these kids to be at a college. And so when I started working at Tyler, I spoke with Nick Cripple about it, and he made it possible to bring these high school students into a college class, and they took this college class. So it was the Mural Corps and the Tyler Corps all working together. And this was the site where we were working. It's a local library. And they collaborated, and a lot like Hope was saying, like, this is not my work. You know, it's about facilitating a process. The students and the librarians talking together designed all of this, fabricated all of it. I probably did most of the install, but it had a profound effect. You would think, oh, yeah, it's going to affect the people who are coming in, the high school kids coming in, but it changed Tyler to have people in there who aren't necessarily art students, art faculty. So I'm just going to go through these quickly. I am not a ceramicist, so during that project, Nick he helped me out. I mean, he hired an additional teacher, the shop tech was helping me with things, and I was just learning about clay at the time. Shortly after, I was doing a curatorial project in the Catskills, and there were signs everywhere that said, no fracking, yes fracking. And I was like, what's fracking? I had no idea what it was. And so I started investigating it, and I learned about how gas is being extracted from Marcellus shale. And this is a place that was filled with shale. I mean, they didn't have roads because there was so much of a rock bed there. Everything was kind of like this red shale. And I thought, well, that's the Marcellus shale. And one day after it rained, I noticed the silt in a puddle, and I was, this is nothing for you guys, I know, but for me, it was like a revelation, like, oh my God, that's clay. And so I had this idea that I wanted to make a cup out of Marcellus shale, because one of the issues with fracking is that there's the potential for poisoning aquifers. And I thought if people were holding a cup that's made out of Marcellus shale, and they would have to question drinking, all the questions that people might feel are distant from them, they would become very visceral and real to them. And it became an adventure, and I've learned a lot both about, the environment, about ceramics, and there's a blog, the Marcellus Clay blogspot.com, that you could look at if you want to learn more about it. There's just some experiments. We had a traveling lab where we could go places, make the cups, and then serve coffee. And also information about fracking that wasn't biased. I was looking for some sort of understanding that wasn't all the way from the left, all the way from the right. Some sort of more nuanced understanding of what was really going on, what was safe. And for the past 5 years, I've been working at Norris Homes, which is a public housing community that's right next to Temple University, where I teach as an adjunct. And this is a really tight-knit community that is going through what a lot of communities throughout the country are going through right now, which is that HUD is no longer going to be housing people of the same socioeconomic level together anymore. They're taking down all these buildings, and they're creating new mixed-income communities. So when I first started working with the residents at Norris, they had just found out that that this was going to happen. They were all afraid that they wouldn't be able to come back. And I started doing some work, like advocacy work, where every single meeting where the city or HUD came in, I videotaped it. So if promises were made, people couldn't turn back and say, we never promised you that. And that has come in handy along the way. A lot of self-documentation. So, I bought myself a camera. I tend to be an amateur in everything I do, and then I learned how to do it. So I bought this camera, and I just put it in the hands of the kids a lot, and the residents. So a lot of documentation. These communities are not going to exist in the future, and it's not being documented. So it's a really important moment in my mind for us to understand what's happening in these communities and what they're like, and not from my view and my eyes, but through the experience of the people who live there. This is a reunion that they had. We did some work with mapping in the community with the kids. Some of the work, there's a big history project around this. Not many people have old photos, and when they do, they're usually in terrible condition. So some of the work I do for people is, I'll fix up their old photos, I'll retouch them, and I'll reprint them for them so that they can maintain their history. We did this large mural, which these are typical Norris homes on these large slabs on a retaining wall, and it's called the Norris Homes Historic Marker. And so when the homes are there, there's this landmark that's never going to go away. So their history is not going to be erased. People are going to have to recognize this community was there. And there's a link on the wall there that brings people to a website, Norris Homes, Philly.com, where a lot of the documentation and the other work that we've been doing is located. As homes started to be boarded up, it started to become very blighted, and this community, when the place starts to look blighted, bad things happen. So we started painting the plywood to make them look like the doors and the windows were still there, which really enhanced the neighborhood for the period of time while there was some transition. And now they're being ripped down. There's part of this project also is 2 more slides. There have been some. There's a lot of success stories coming out of housing, out of public housing, but people point to very specific people who really were exceptional. And Jamaluddin Takuma grew up there. He's known as one of the top 5 bassists in the world, and so he came back and he did a concert on the very same community center stage that he performed when he was 16 years old, and he's now in his 60s. And it was a big reunion, incredibly touching moment. So part of this also is bringing people back to the community right at the moment that it's kind of being spread apart. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So now you have a little understanding about the diversity of practice among the artists. And I have to say that one of the most exciting parts of planning this kind of project is Josie and I were thinking about who to ask. Who is the right person? There's so many different people in Philadelphia. Jennie was saying, I feel really lucky. I think we're a place where people are thinking about social activism and thinking about activism through their art. So we have a really robust community. We don't have too much time for discussion, so I think I'm just going to skip to focus back on the projects that Josie and I talked about and to ask the artists, is there something that you feel you'd like to express that you learned from the Maker Days project or the Clay and Conversations, a moment that was really evocative to you, or kind of a general thought? Does anyone want to start? Hope's making eye contact, so she gets to start. Can you tell that I was a teacher?
Push. Can you guys? Okay. So I think that the one thing that stood out, so I work a lot with public, and as an educator, I've been teaching for a while, but the one thing that was different about doing this project is that we were going into these communities that didn't know who we were. They didn't, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Clay Studio, and I don't live in Philly anymore, but they didn't know who we were, and they would come to us, and we would tell them who we are and what we do, and people, it was just like we were, we had to just introduce ourselves, and then we let them be part of that. And I think that was something very different, and how we did have translators to help us, because a lot of us didn't speak fluent Spanish, and so we had translators, and I think that really lowered the barriers of them being intimidated, and and we just really wanted them to just kind of be part of who we are, not us being, coming in and making a large imprint. We want them to kind of come into our footprint. And I think that was really, with this project, that happened, and you could see that, and I thought that was really strong.
Thanks. Jennie, did you want to say something?
A lot of these projects, so the community, is this working?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. So a lot of, there are several communities that are surrounding the area where the Clay Studio is at, and a lot of different groups of people. There are artists moving in. There are people who have been there for a very long time, working class folks. There are a lot of new immigrants, both Hispanic as well as Middle Eastern folks, and engaging. I mean, the final event that was not outside but inside, we had at a mosque, and everybody came from all of the events, and it was so incredibly powerful to see people who came here from all over the world, who, we all didn't necessarily even share our language, just an incredibly powerful day. And the connection to the Clay Studio is going to be really profound, I think, because of that. So I was really happy to be involved in the whole process.
Well, that's good. We were happy to have you. I think to add to what Jennie's saying, it was, I don't know that I didn't understand when we started that we were going to be forming relationships with specific people. I know that sounds kind of stupid, but you know, I was used to the way we do projects when we're kind of going out to festivals or seeing people come to us and wanting to throw in the wheel. But through the Clay and Conversations project, we had 4 programs, and almost the same people came to each program. So by the time we had that final one at Al-Aqsa, we knew these people. We had spent 3 afternoons together already making art and talking about kind of very personal and important topics. So there was a warmth and Josie might be able to help me with my words now, like just a direct connection. We were like hugging each other and feeling like we had made friends and realizing that these are the people who are now going to be our ambassadors into the rest of their neighborhoods and communities to tell people that they had a good experience with the Clay Studio. And then when we, for the next 2 years, will keep working with them, and then when the doors open to the new building, you know, they're going to be part of the integral community of the Clay Studio. So it was really powerful to have those very specific personal responses. Josie, did you want to?
Yeah, I also just wanted to say that in kind of building off of that, in working on both projects simultaneously, I think we were probably just pretty early on, and I realized, whoa, this is just the start of things, and that we really have a responsibility to kind of figure out what the next steps are for continuing these relationships and programming, and seeing how excited everybody was to work with Clay and finding ways to kind of continue that relationship in the interim before we open our doors.
Yeah, getting a grant to do these kinds of activities is great, and we're working so hard. We're in the middle of it. We're like, okay, only one more, then we're good. But we're not going to be done, and we're not going to have a grant for the next one maybe, because we can't stop and then start again when we get funding. We just have to keep doing it. Otherwise, we'll lose that trust that we built. Hiroe, did you want to say anything?
So I've been living in the neighborhood for since I've been free, and I didn't know any of my neighbors until I participated in this Maker Day event. And first few events, when we put the tent and we were ready, no one came for so long. So I had to run around the area, giving people flyers. Why don't you come here? And then when I explained to them, this is a free event. And you get to make your play, and you get to decorate your play, and you get invited to dinner at the end of the summer, and no one really believed what we were doing. But at the after the event, and they came back to the dinner, and it was just an amazing moment that everything connected, and we built the trust by offering something, and then they came back, and I was really happy to be a part of this event.
Yeah, it was that physical, in July, you're going to do something with us, and we're going to let you know, and in September, we're going to give you this finished project. I mean, that's pretty powerful for anybody, let alone something that you're doing completely for free that you sort of happen upon in a festival, and those are really important. I think that was a huge way to build that trust. We just keep coming back to that word, trust. So for the benefit of maybe questions in a moment, but I feel like maybe the reason you all came is because you're thinking of doing this kind of programming, or you already are, or you're just considering it. So I wanted to ask everyone to think about a bit of advice that they have for other people who are interested in engaging with this, either from the perspective of you guys as personal artists who want to work on this kind of stuff, or from an organizational standpoint. Hope, did you want to start?
I mean, I think if anything, since I run my own business, and so I'm trying to do this as a business or as an artist, you can apply for funding, and that's great, and it's really great when you can get funding to do that, but you really could just go to a community event, which is free, and you could just set up a small table. Like, the scale doesn't have to be as large. Like, they really, what the Clay Studio did was a large event, like they really brought in a lot. But you just have to start somewhere, and I would bring like one screen into a classroom, into a community, and just print free paper and just hand out, free stuff. And so the thing is that you can start small, but it's about repetition. It's about doing it more, and then really the people will trust you and then invite you, and then you get invited. So now I get paid and get asked to do this on my own in high schools and community centers. So it's kind of building, and it's still building, and it's still building. And so with the Clay Studio, this is the beginning. And so it's just like, now you have to keep showing face. Like, you guys can't give up. You guys got to keep doing it.
I think there's, and maybe this doesn't need to be said, but especially in a lot of social practice work, there's just obviously a lot of issues around privilege. You can't go into a community with a charity state of mind as if you are coming and bringing something that's going to be so great and important to people who don't have something. If you don't recognize that the people who you're working with have something, then you're really, really blind. I've also heard from a lot of people, especially at Norris, they've told me the difference with you is that you stayed. They're so used to people coming in and out and really capitalizing off of charity work, where they could go in and they could have a photo op, and it works so nicely for them, but they're in and out, and they don't get to know anyone in the community, and they don't really check in to see what the community needs. So, I think you have to be aware of the level of engagement that you are interested in having, because it is a huge responsibility, as you're saying, Josie. You guys are on the hook.
Yep.
You are on the hook now, and to pull away from it, I'm going to be working with people from Norris for the rest of my life. I had no idea that was what I was getting into, but it's what it required.
Hiroe, that might not be one of your.
I guess I'll probably just a little bit reiterating all of those points and back to listening and really being responsive to what the people that we worked with wanted, and then also from an organizational standpoint, a lot of the organizations that we came and were like, hey, we have this great project, and really what they knew about our Claymobile program and wanted that program to come to their organization and be able to work with their kids. So we had to sort of reorganize our funding priorities a little bit to really be responsive to that. And I think that's really important and was definitely a lesson for me.
I think we've touched on this, but just to reiterate that when you want to work with a community, acknowledging the value that they have that we want to share, and then wanting to share our value. But when you're presenting your organization, making sure that your organization really does reflect the community you want to work with. And that for us meant focusing on everything being bilingual, having a translator, making sure that, that the people at the Clay Studio reflect the people in the neighborhood that you're working with. So that's really important too. I'd love to hear if anyone has any questions. Hopefully. That's a good question. We have extensive grant reporting with the plan is to put this narrative into kind of a publishable document that will live on our website. So we do have it documented to a certain extent on our website, and we plan to add more models. When I started thinking together with Josie and everyone about the creative Clay and Conversations, Theaster Gates came to mind, who's worked really successfully with neighborhoods in Chicago. There's there's some artists in England who are doing a really good job. There's a group called Assemble in the UK. They actually won the Turner Prize a few years ago for the work that they're doing. And the Turner Prize is a major contemporary art award, and it was given to this collective that's doing social practice around making things, ceramics, but other functional items with a community. Claire Toomey, Tomey. So yeah, personally, I was inspired by these people, social practice artists who I'd met and heard about. Did you guys have inspiration or other organizations that you look to?
I know that there's another clay organization, but I can't remember their name, but they have online a whole, there's a PDF of a document that they wrote about how to do a community dinner. I can't remember, but they had some really good advice of how to structure it, and they had one artist make all of the plates for it. So
It didn't directly relate to the work that we did, but Oliver Herring ran a few task parties in Philadelphia, and they have really made a large impact on me, and it did affect. In fact, the last event that I was speaking of was very much like a task party in a lot of ways, so that it might be something to look up.
How do you spell his name? Herring?
Herring, Herring, and it's a task party, TASK.
Oh, Bill Strickland in Pittsburgh is a great inspiration as well. Yeah, the Manchester Craft Guild, Manchester Guild. Does anybody else want to share someone they've been inspired by or a project they're working on? Or we just answered your questions because we did such a good job. That's it? Yep. Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it.